Captain Lee Hana gripped her command chair as the bridge shook violently around her. Red warning lights flashed across every surface of the human patrol ship, defiant, while alarms screamed their urgent warnings. Through the main view screen, she watched the massive alien warship growing larger by the second. "Captain, incoming transmission from the alien vessel," her communications officer called out, his voice tight with fear. "Put it through," Hana ordered, her dark eyes never leaving the enemy ship. The screen flickered and revealed a terrifying sight. The alien commander stood nearly 8 feet tall with pale blue skin stretched tight over powerful muscles. 4 arms extended from his broad shoulders, and his golden eyes burned with barely controlled rage. When he spoke, his voice was deep and threatening. "I am Fleet Commander Kale Drex of the Keth Empire. You have entered forbidden space, human. Surrender now or face destruction." Hana stood from her chair, straightening her blue uniform. At 28 years old, she had already earned her reputation as one of humanity's finest military minds. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her voice remained steady despite the danger. "This is Captain Lee Hana of the Earth Defense Force. These are neutral waters according to the Galactic Treaty. We have every right to patrol here." Drex's 4 hands clenched into fists. "Your kind knows nothing of honor. You speak of treaties, while your people steal our resources and enslave our worlds." "That's not true," Hana replied firmly. "Humans have never attacked Keth colonies. We're explorers, not conquerors." "Lies," Drex roared. "Your ships destroyed 3 of our settlements last month. The survivors told us of your cruelty." Hana felt confusion wash over her. Human forces hadn't engaged the Keth in over 2 years. Someone was feeding the aliens false information, but there was no time to explain. Drex was already raising his weapon. "All hands! Battle stations!" Hana shouted as she dove behind her command chair. The Defiant's hull groaned under the impact of alien energy weapons. Sparks flew from damaged control panels as her crew fought to return fire. Through the chaos, Hana could hear her weapons officer calling out targeting solutions. "Direct hit on their forward shields, Captain." But the Keth ship was massive, easily 3 times larger than the Defiant. Its return fire was devastating. Hana felt the deck tilting beneath her feet as her ship's engines began to fail. "Hull breach on deck 5. We're losing atmosphere fast." "Emergency power to shields," Hana ordered, but she knew it was too late. On the view screen she could see that Drex's ship was also badly damaged. Flames poured from multiple hull breaches, and the massive vessel was spinning out of control. Both ships were caught in the gravity well of a nearby moon. "Captain, we can't maintain orbit. We're going down." Hana grabbed the ship's intercom as the Defiant plunged toward the rocky surface below. "All hands, brace for impact. This is not a drill." The last thing she remembered was the terrible sound of metal tearing apart as her ship crashed into the alien landscape. When she finally opened her eyes hours later, she found herself alone among the twisted wreckage, with only her greatest enemy for company on this dead world. Hana's eyes snapped open to the sound of metal scraping against rock. Pain shot through her left shoulder as she pushed herself up from the twisted wreckage of her command chair. The bridge of the Defiant was barely recognizable, filled with smoke and sparking electronics. She grabbed her sidearm and climbed through a gaping hole in the hull. The alien moon stretched before her like a nightmare landscape. Purple rocks jutted from the ground like broken teeth, and the sky burned orange with toxic clouds. The air tasted bitter, even through her emergency breathing mask. That's when she saw him. Fleet Commander Drex was pulling supplies from his own crashed ship about 200 meters away. Even from a distance, she could see dark fluid dripping from wounds on his blue skin. His ship had fared worse than hers, split almost completely in half. Hana raised her weapon and fired. The energy blast struck the rocks near Drex's feet, sending purple fragments flying. The alien commander spun around, spotted her, and dove behind a boulder as he returned fire with a weapon that looked like it could punch through a tank. "Come out and face me, human coward," Drex shouted across the barren landscape. "After what your people did to our colonies?" Hana called back, keeping low behind the wreckage. "I don't think so." For the next 6 hours they played a deadly game, dove cat and mouse among the debris. Hana used her smaller size to move quickly between pieces of wreckage, while Drex relied on his superior strength to lift massive chunks of metal as shields. Neither could get a clear shot at the other. But the moon had other plans for them. As the alien sun began to set, the temperature dropped like a stone. Hana's breath started forming clouds inside her mask, and ice began forming on the metal around her. Her emergency suit wasn't designed for this kind of extreme cold. Worse yet, her breathing mask was flashing a red warning light. The toxic atmosphere was slowly eating through the filters. She had maybe 4 hours of clean air left, and that was being generous. Across the battlefield, she could see that Drex was having similar problems. The alien commander was moving more slowly now, and she noticed him checking a device on his wrist repeatedly. His breathing seemed labored. Human, Drex's voice carried across the rocks, but it sounded different now. Less angry, more desperate. How long do your air filters last in this poison? Hana hesitated before answering. Why? Would I tell you that? Because we both know this moon will kill us long before we kill each other. She looked around at the hostile landscape. Nothing could survive here without proper shelter and life support. The wreckage of both ships contained valuable supplies, but they were scattered across a wide area. It would take both of them working together to gather what they needed. What are you suggesting? She called out. Temporary truce, we build shelters, fix our air recyclers, then go back to trying to murder each other tomorrow. Hana almost laughed despite their situation. The honesty was refreshing, even coming from her enemy. She could see Drex slowly standing up from behind his boulder, keeping his hands visible but not dropping his weapon. One day, she agreed, stepping out from her cover. Then we settle this properly. Agreed, human. But I still plan to kill you. The feeling is mutual, alien. As they began working together to salvage life support equipment, neither realized this was the first step towards something neither of them could have imagined. The next morning brought new challenges that neither Hana nor Drex had expected. The SACs. Emergency shelters they'd built were holding, but barely. Ice crystals covered everything, and the toxic wind howled like a living thing outside their makeshift walls. Hana was working on a pile of electronics she'd salvaged from both ships when she heard Drex muttering to himself in the corner. What? Caught her attention wasn't the alien words, but the few human phrases mixed in. Frequency modulator. Broken again. Damn this cursed thing. She looked up, surprised. You speak our language? Drex's golden eyes met hers, and for a moment he looked almost embarrassed. Little bit. Learn from prisoners we take. His pronunciation was rough, like he was chewing on broken glass, but she could understand him clearly enough. This changed everything. Maybe they could actually communicate instead of just pointing and grunting. Prisoners from where? Hana asked, setting down her tools. From colonies your people attack. 3 moons, many dead. Drex's face darkened with pain and anger. That's impossible, Hana said firmly. Human forces haven't attacked anyone in over 2 years. We're not at war with your people. You lie! Drex slammed his fist against the metal wall, making their shelter shake. I see the ships myself. Human markings, human weapons. My brother's family. All dead. Hana saw something in his eyes then that she recognized. The same look she'd seen in mirrors after losing her own squad to alien raiders. Raw grief mixed with burning rage. Show me, she said quietly. Drex pulled out a small device that projected holographic images. The footage was shaky and dark, but clear enough. Ships that looked human were indeed attacking Keth settlements, but something was wrong. The designs were slightly off, the weapons different from anything she'd seen in the Earth Defense Force. These aren't our ships, Hana said, studying the images carefully. They look similar, but the engine configuration is wrong, and those weapons... We don't make anything like that. Then who? Drex asked, his anger shifting to confusion. Before Hana could answer, a new sound filled their shelter, a high-pitched whining that made both of them freeze in terror. Through the small window they'd created, they could see lights moving across the sky. Not ships, but something else entirely. What is that? Hana whispered. Drex's face went pale, almost white instead of blue. The destroyers. They follow us here. The what? Machines, made by... I not know word in your language. They eat planets, turn everything into more machines. First they take our homeworld, then colonies. We run, but they always follow. Hannah felt ice in her veins that had nothing to do with the cold. Are you saying something is hunting your entire species? Not just hunt, destroy everything. Make copy ships to trick other races. Start wars so everyone fight each other instead of fighting them. The pieces clicked together in Hannah's mind, like puzzle parts. The fake human ships, the mysterious attacks on both sides, the escalating conflict between their peoples. Someone or something was playing them against each other. We need to get off this moon, she said urgently, grabbing components from both shipwrecks. Can you help me build a long-range transmitter? Why you help me now? Drex asked suspiciously. Because if what you're saying is true, then we're fighting the wrong enemy. They worked through the day, Hannah's technical knowledge combining with Drex's understanding of Keth communication systems. Despite their differences, they made a surprisingly effective team. When arguments broke out over design choices, they found ways to compromise that made their solutions even better. As the second night fell, they had something that might actually work. The storm hit without warning on their third day together. One moment they were testing their makeshift transmitter under the orange sky, and the next, lightning was tearing across the horizon like angry white claws. But this wasn't ordinary lightning. "Get inside now!" Hannah shouted as she saw the electrical discharge dancing between the metal wreckage around them. The storm was so powerful, it was making the salvaged ship parts glow and spark. They scrambled toward Drex's shelter, which was larger and better insulated than hers. But as they dove through the entrance, a massive bolt of energy struck Hannah's shelter directly. The explosion sent chunks of metal flying everywhere, and when the smoke cleared, her temporary home was nothing but twisted scrap. "Well," Hannah said, brushing debris from her hair, "looks like we're roommates now." The shelter that had seemed spacious for one person felt impossibly small with both of them inside. Drex had to hunch over to avoid hitting his head on the low ceiling, and every time one of them moved, they bumped into the other. Outside, the electromagnetic storm raged like nothing Hannah had ever seen. Blue and white energy danced across the landscape, turning night into day every few seconds. The metallic walls around them hummed with residual charge. "How long do these storms usually last?" Hannah asked, settling into the corner farthest from Drex. "On my homeworld, 3 days, maybe 4. Drex sat cross-legged on the opposite side, his large frame taking up most of the remaining space. But this moon, who knows? Great. 3 days trapped in a space barely big enough for a closet with someone who wanted to kill her. Hannah tried to focus on checking their equipment, but the silence grew heavy between them. It was Drex who spoke first. "Your homeworld, it has storms like this?" "Not exactly," Hannah replied, surprised by the genuine curiosity in his voice. "We have thunderstorms, but nothing that could melt metal. Earth's weather is gentler, I guess. We have seasons that change gradually. Spring brings flowers and new growth. Summer means long, warm days when children play outside until late at night." She found herself describing things she hadn't thought about in years. The smell of rain on hot pavement in her childhood neighborhood. The way her mother's garden looked in autumn, full of red and gold leaves. The sound of laughter echoing through the streets during festival celebrations. Drex listened without interruption, his golden eyes reflecting the flickering light from outside. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "We had seasons, too," he said finally. "But not like yours. Our world had honor seasons, times when young warriors would prove themselves, when families would gather to share stories of ancestors, when we would plant memory trees for those who died with courage." His voice grew softer as he spoke about Keth traditions, how warriors would carry stones from their birthplace when they traveled, always keeping a piece of home with them, how they believed that courage shared between comrades made both fighters stronger, how their people had songs that could make even the bravest warrior weep with pride. My daughter was learning the Song of First Stars when he stopped abruptly. "You have a daughter?" Hannah asked gently. "Had." The single word carried enormous weight. "She was 7 seasons old, loved to climb the crystal trees near our home, always asking questions about everything." His 4 hands clenched and unclenched. The machines came during sleep time. Most families never woke up. Hannah felt her throat tighten. She'd assumed Drex was just another military commander, but he was a father grieving his child, a man whose entire world had been destroyed by something he couldn't fight. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it completely. "Your family?" he asked. "Gone too. Different war, same pain." In that moment, something shifted between them. They weren't just enemy soldiers anymore. The storm had finally passed, leaving behind a landscape that looked like a war zone. Twisted metal and scattered debris covered everything as far as the eye could see. Hannah stepped carefully over the wreckage, searching for power cells that might have survived the electromagnetic blast. "Be careful near the engine parts," Drex called from behind her. "They still carry charge from the storm." She nodded, focusing on a promising pile of components near what used to be her ship's communications array. The transmitter they'd built was damaged but repairable if she could find the right parts. Her fingers worked quickly, sorting through the salvageable pieces. That's when she heard the ominous cracking sound. A massive section of hull plating, weakened by the storm's energy, was sliding down from where it had been balanced against a rock formation. Hannah looked up just in time to see several tons of twisted metal falling directly toward her. She tried to dive away, but her boot caught on a piece of debris. The world seemed to move in slow motion as she fell forward, unable to get clear. The metal structure crashed down, pinning her left leg beneath its crushing weight. Pain exploded through her body like white fire. She tried to pull herself free, but the metal was far too heavy. Worse, she could feel something warm and wet spreading inside her boot. "Blood, Drex!" she called out, her voice tight with pain and embarrassment. After everything they'd been through, she was going to die because she tripped over a piece of junk. The alien commander appeared within seconds, taking in the situation with practiced military efficiency. Without hesitation, he positioned himself next to the fallen debris and lifted. His forearms strained against the weight, muscles bulging as he raised the metal section just enough for her to pull her leg free. "Can you move?" he asked, not letting go of the metal until she was completely clear. Hannah tried to stand and immediately collapsed. Her left leg wouldn't support any weight, and the pain was getting worse. "I don't think so." Drex let the debris crash back down and knelt beside her. "Let me see. I can handle it myself," she said automatically, the words coming from years of military training. "Never show weakness, never accept help from the enemy." "Stop being stupid, human," Drex said. But his tone was gentle rather than harsh. "You are hurt. I help." Before she could protest further, he was carefully examining her injured leg. His large hands moved with surprising delicacy as he checked for broken bones and assessed the damage. When he found the source of the bleeding, he immediately began tearing strips from his own clothing to create bandages. "Why are you doing this?" Hannah asked quietly as he worked. "Because you are hurt," he replied simply, as if the answer was obvious. "But I'm your enemy. This would be a perfect chance to..." "To what? Let you bleed to death?" Drex looked up at her, with something that might have been disappointment. "That is not the way of honor. You fight with courage, you deserve to live with honor." As he wrapped her wound with careful precision, Hannah found herself really looking at him for the first time. Not as an alien threat or a military target, but as a person. She noticed the old scars that crossed his arms, the way his eyes focused intently on his work, the gentleness in his touch despite his enormous strength. "There," he said finally, checking the bandage. "It will heal, but you must rest." "We don't have time to rest. Those machines you mentioned will find us whether..." "You can walk or not," Drex interrupted. "Better to face them when you are strong than when you are bleeding." He helped her back to their shelter, supporting most of her weight without complaint. As they settled inside, Hannah realized something had fundamentally changed between them. The careful distance they'd maintained was gone, replaced by something that felt almost like trust. "Thank you," she said simply. "We take care of each other now," Drex replied, "is better than dying alone." 2 days had passed since Hannah's injury, and her leg was healing faster than expected. Drex had proven to be surprisingly skilled at medical care, changing her bandages with the same careful attention he'd shown when first treating her wound. They'd managed to repair their transmitter, but so far no rescue signals had come through. The isolation was starting to wear on both of them, though neither wanted to admit it. They'd grown comfortable in each other's presence, their conversations flowing more easily with each passing hour. On this particular evening, the toxic clouds had cleared enough to reveal the alien sky in all its strange beauty. 3 moons hung overhead like glowing pearls, casting silver light across the rocky landscape. Hana sat outside their shelter, testing her injured leg while watching the unfamiliar constellations. "Your leg feels better?" Drex emerged from the shelter carrying 2 cups of the bitter tea they'd learned to make from edible plants found near the crash sites. "Much better, thanks to you." She accepted the warm cup gratefully. "I should be able to walk normally tomorrow." Drex settled beside her on the smooth rock they'd started using as a bench. His massive frame made her feel small, but not threatened anymore. Somewhere along the way, she'd stopped seeing him as a dangerous alien and started seeing him as simply Drex. "The stars are different here," she observed, pointing upward. "Everything is different here," he replied, but he wasn't looking at the sky. His golden eyes were studying her face in the moonlight. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. The events of the past week felt like a strange dream. A week ago, they'd been trying to kill each other. Now, they were sharing tea and stargazing like old friends. "Hana," Drex said quietly, and something in his tone made her turn to face him. "When we are rescued, when we return to our people, what about it? They will not understand. What we have learned here, about the machines, about each other. They will call us traitors." She knew he was right. Her superiors would demand to know why she'd cooperated with an enemy commander instead of trying to escape or eliminate him. The fact that they'd worked together, trusted each other, even cared about each other's well-being, it would be seen as weakness at best, treason at worst. "Maybe they don't need to know everything," she said carefully. "You would lie to your people for me?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither wanted to examine too closely. But as Hana looked into his eyes, she realized the answer was already clear in her heart. "I would tell them the truth that matters," she said. "That you saved my life. That you're an honorable warrior fighting to protect what's left of your people. That together we discovered who our real enemies are." Drex reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't move, his large hand gently touched her cheek. His skin was warm despite the cool night air. "You are not what I expected, Hana of Earth. Neither are you, Drex of the Keth." They were sitting closer now, though neither could say exactly when that had happened. The space between them seemed to crackle with an energy that had nothing to do with electromagnetic storms. "This is dangerous," Drex whispered, but he didn't pull away. "Everything about this situation is dangerous," Hana replied, "but I'm tired of being afraid." When their lips met, it was gentle and tentative, as if they were both afraid the moment might shatter if they moved too quickly. It lasted only a few seconds, but it changed everything between them. They pulled apart, both breathing harder than the simple kiss warranted. "Our peoples will never accept this," Drex said. "Then maybe it's time our peoples learned something new." The rescue ships appeared on the horizon like a dream that Hana wasn't sure she wanted to wake up from. After 8 days, stranded on the toxic moon, the sight of approaching vessels should have filled her with pure relief. Instead, she felt her stomach twist with dread. 2 ships, Drex observed, his enhanced vision picking out details she couldn't see yet. 1 human, 1 Keth, flying in formation. That was unexpected. Human and Keth ships never flew together unless they were shooting at each other. Hana grabbed their makeshift communicator and activated the emergency beacon they'd been broadcasting. 4 days. This is Captain Lee Hana of the Earth Defense Force to approaching vessels. Do you copy? The response came immediately from both ships at once. Captain Hana, this is Admiral Park from the EDF Harmony. We're here to bring you home. A second voice followed, speaking in accented but clear human standard. Commander Drex, this is War Leader. Vesh of the Keth Fleet. Your family mourns your loss. We come to retrieve you. Our family? Drex looked confused. But they said, the war is over. Admiral Park's voice crackled through their communicator. Both sides discovered evidence of a third party manipulating our conflicts. We've signed a temporary ceasefire to investigate these Machine entities you reported, Hana. And Drex exchanged glances. Their desperate transmissions about the destroyers had actually been received and believed. But as the ships grew closer, Hana noticed something troubling. They were maintaining a careful distance from each other, and weapon systems on both vessels remained active. The landing was tense and formal. Admiral Park emerged from the human shuttle with a full honor guard, while war leader Vesh brought an equally impressive escort of Keth warriors. The two groups faced each other across the rocky landing site like opposing armies. Captain Hana, Admiral Park approached with obvious relief. We feared the worst when your ship went missing. The entire fleet has been searching for survivors. Admiral Park was a stern woman in her 50s with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. Right now, those eyes were studying the makeshift shelter and the mixed debris from both crashed ships with growing suspicion. Admiral, I need to report critical intelligence about the entities responsible for the recent attacks on both our peoples, Hana began. All reports will be filed through proper channels after debriefing. The Admiral cut her off. Her gaze shifted to Drex, who was greeting his own rescue party with similar formality. I trust you maintained appropriate conduct during your captivity. The word captivity stung. Commander Drex wasn't holding me prisoner, Admiral. We worked together to survive and gather intelligence. Together? The Admiral's voice grew cold. Captain, you are aware of regulations regarding fraternization with enemy combatants? Before Hana could respond, raised voices erupted from the Keth group. War leader Vesh was speaking rapidly in the Keth language, his tone growing more agitated. By the second, Drex was responding with increasing frustration, gesturing toward Hana and their shelter. What are they discussing? Admiral Park demanded. War leader Vesh questions my honor, Drex called out, switching to human standard so both groups could understand. He believes cooperation with humans shows weakness. He says I have brought shame to our people. And he would be correct, Admiral. Park replied coldly. Just as Captain Hana has violated her oath by providing aid and comfort to the enemy. The enemy? Hana stepped forward, anger flaring in her chest. This man saved my life. He helped us discover the truth about who's really behind this war. Captain, you will return to your ship immediately for debriefing and disciplinary review. Admiral Park ordered, any intelligence you've gathered will be properly analyzed by qualified personnel. And you will come with us now, War Leader Vesh addressed Drex in the same commanding tone. The Council of War wishes to examine your conduct during this unfortunate episode. Hana felt panic rising in her throat. They were going to be separated, probably court-martialed, and everything they'd discovered about working together would be dismissed as the ramblings of traumatized survivors. What if we refuse? She asked quietly. Both rescue parties fell silent. Admiral Park's face went pale with shock, while War Leader Vesh's expression darkened with rage. Refuse? The Admiral repeated. Captain, you are speaking of desertion. Treason. I'm speaking of the truth, Hana replied, reaching out to take Drex's hand. And sometimes the truth is more important than following orders. The sight of human and Keth hands joined together sent shocked murmurs through both rescue parties. But neither Hana nor Drex let go. The silence stretched across the rocky landing site like a held breath. 24 soldiers from both species stared at the joined hands of their officers, with expressions ranging from shock to disgust to outright fury. Admiral Park was the first to break the tension. Captain Hana, release that creature immediately and report to your shuttle. That is a direct order. No, Hana said simply, her voice carrying clearly in the thin air. The word hit like a physical blow. Several human soldiers reached for their weapons, while the Keth warriors began spreading into a defensive formation. War Leader Vesh stepped forward, his forearms flexing menacingly. Commander Drex, you will explain this shameful display, Vesh demanded in accented human standard. Have you forgotten your oath to the Keth Empire? I have forgotten nothing, Drex replied, his deep voice steady and calm. I remember my oath to protect our people from all enemies, and I have learned that humans are not our enemies. They destroyed our colonies, one of the Keth warriors shouted. No, Hana called out, addressing both groups. We have proof that neither humans nor Keth attacked each other's settlements. We were all manipulated by the machine entities, Commander Drex calls the destroyers. She gestured toward their makeshift shelter. Everything we discovered is documented. In there, sensor readings, analysis of the fake attack ships, communications intercepts. The evidence is clear. Admiral Park's expression remained skeptical. Even if that's true, it doesn't excuse your conduct. Regulations exist for good reasons, Captain. Do they? Hannah asked, stepping forward but not releasing Drex's hand. What regulation covers working with a former enemy to expose a greater threat? What rule explains how to handle first contact with machines that can perfectly mimic our technology? She looked around at the mixed group of soldiers, seeing uncertainty beginning to replace some of the anger on their faces. For 8 days, Commander Drex and I have worked together. We've combined human engineering with Keth military tactics. We've shared resources, protected each other, and solved problems that neither of us could have handled alone. And you know what we discovered? What? Asked a young human soldier, clearly caught up in her words despite himself. That we're stronger together than we ever were apart. Drex stepped up beside her, addressing his own people in their language, before switching to human standard. I told them what I told you, Hannah. That honor is not just about following old rules. Sometimes honor means finding new ways to protect those we care about. War Leader Vesh's expression was conflicted. The Council will never accept this. Cooperation with humans goes against everything we've been taught. Then maybe it's time to learn something new, Drex replied. The destroyers nearly wiped out our entire civilization because we were too proud to ask for help. How many more of our people will die if we keep fighting the wrong enemies? Admiral Park shook her head. This is madness. The military chain of command exists for a reason. You can't just ignore orders because you've developed feelings and for an alien. This isn't about feelings, Hannah said firmly. This is about results. In 8 days, we've accomplished more cooperation between our species than diplomats have managed in 20 years. We've proven that humans and Keth can work as partners instead of enemies. She looked directly at Admiral Park. What if we could create a joint training program? Human officers learning Keth combat techniques, Keth warriors studying human technology and strategy. Imagine what we could accomplish against the real threats out there. The government would never approve such a program, Admiral Park said, but her tone was less certain now. The government approved this rescue mission, Hannah pointed out. Human and Keth ships flying together, coordinating their efforts. If we can do it in space, why not on the ground? Drex nodded enthusiastically. We could establish training facilities on neutral worlds. Small groups at first, volunteers only. Let them see what we have seen. And who would run such a program? War Leader Vesh asked, though his question sounded more curious than hostile now. Hannah and Drex exchanged glances, both thinking the same thing. We would, they said together. 3 years had passed since that tense confrontation on the toxic moon, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Admiral Hannah stood on the bridge of the combined fleet flagship Unity, watching the tactical display with the calm focus that had made her legendary among both human and Keth forces. Enemy swarm detected at coordinates 77 Mark IV, reported Lieutenant Kim, one of the mixed species crew members trained at the Joint Academy. Estimated 12,000 individual units, moving in standard destroyer formation. Beside her, War Marshal Drex studied the same data through his enhanced vision implants. His 4 arms moved across multiple control panels simultaneously, coordinating defensive positions with an efficiency that still amazed the human crew members. They're using the same tactics they used against Keth Homeworld, Drex observed, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had survived the machine's initial assault. Overwhelming numbers, perfect coordination, no regard for individual, unit survival. But they haven't faced anything like this before, Hannah replied with quiet confidence. She was right. The combined fleet spreading out before them was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships with their advanced shields and precise targeting systems flew alongside Keth vessels with their superior firepower and aggressive maneuvering capabilities. But more importantly, the crews were integrated in ways that maximized both species' strengths. Admiral, we're receiving requests for battle orders from all fleet commanders, reported Commander Rex, a Keth officer who had graduated from their academy's first class. "Tell them to implement Formation Omega," Hana ordered, "and remind Captain Morris that his human crew needs to trust their Keth gunners completely. No second-guessing during combat." The formation they'd developed was revolutionary. Human ships would use their superior sensors and shields to identify targets and absorb initial attacks, while Keth vessels would dart in for devastating strikes before withdrawing to safety. It required perfect timing and absolute trust between species that had been enemies just years before. "Drex, how are our boarding teams looking?" Hana asked as the enemy swarm grew closer on the display. "Ready for deployment," he replied with satisfaction. "Mixed squads, just like we planned. Human technical specialists to disable their systems. Keth warriors to handle close combat. The machines won't know what hit them." This was their greatest innovation. Previous attempts to fight the destroyers had failed because the machines could adapt to any single species' tactics. But they couldn't adapt to two completely different approaches being used simultaneously. "Enemy fleet opening fire," Lieutenant Kim announced. "Impact in 30 seconds. "All ships, engage at will," Hana commanded, her voice carrying across every bridge in the fleet. What followed was the most spectacular space battle in recorded history. Human precision and Keth aggression combined into something the destroyer machines simply couldn't counter. When human ships' careful targeting identified weak points, Keth vessels struck like hammers. When Keth warriors needed technical support, human engineers provided it without hesitation. But the real victory wasn't just tactical. Throughout the battle, Hana could hear the communications between ships, human and Keth voices working together, covering each other's weaknesses, celebrating each other's successes. The fear and hatred that had once defined their relationship had been replaced by something far more powerful: mutual respect and genuine friendship. "Enemy formation breaking apart," Commander Rex reported with obvious excitement. "They're retreating." Cheers erupted across every bridge in the fleet, with human voices mixing with Keith victory cries, in a harmony that would have been impossible to imagine just a few years earlier. "Admiral," Drex said quietly, placing one of his large hands gently on her shoulder, "do you think they understand what we've really accomplished here?" Hana looked around at their mixed crew, at the display showing human and Keith ships flying in perfect formation, at the galaxy they'd helped protect through cooperation instead of conflict. "They will," she replied. "And someday, their children will grow up in a galaxy where working together isn't unusual. It's just normal." The love story that had begun with two enemies stranded on a dead moon had become something much larger, proof that the greatest victories come not from defeating enemies but from turning them into allies.